The ACE study, the Adverse Childhood Experiences Study, is a huge study put together to determine are the instances of childhood abuse of various kinds at all prevalent in a general population? And if so, how do they play out later in life? We created a so-called ACE score where 1 point was given for each of the categories experienced. Whether it was 1 time or 63 times, it was simply 1 point if you were experienced with a category. That tends to understate things a bit. So the 10 categories: heavy-duty emotional abuse, major physical abuse, contact sexual abuse, major emotional neglect, major physical neglect, growing up in a home where mother was being beaten, growing up without both biological parents, growing up in a home where one of the members of your household was an alcoholic or drug user, growing up in a home where one of the members of the household was chronically depressed, suicidal, or in the state hospital, growing up in a home where one of the members of your household was imprisoned during your childhood or adolescence. First 18 years of life. A person experiencing any 6 of the 10 categories that we studied had a life expectancy almost 20 years less than an individual who had experienced none of the 10 categories. A person was 4,600% more likely to become an IV drug user than a person who had experienced none of the 10 categories. A person was between 3,100 and 5,000% more likely to attempt suicide than someone who had experienced none of them. Very early in life, those produce disruptions in brain development. Those disruptions then produce things that are more readily visible: the weepy kid, the socially isolated kid, the kid that has trouble learning in school. By the time they become teenagers, then they have enough freedom to try to do something to feel better: smoking, eating, alcoholism, drug use, gambling. By the time they become middle-aged, those things that help short-term begin to play out in terms of heart disease, lung disease, liver disease, autoimmune diseases, rheumatoid arthritis, chronic depression, suicidality. Clearly, we're self-medicating. Alcohol helps. Smoking. Nicotine has been known for almost a century to have potent anti-anxiety activity, potent antidepressant activity. Moreover, those beneficial effects from nicotine occur in 15 or 20 seconds of inhalation. The risks, which are very real, are 15 or 20 years downstream. I need help now. I'll worry later about what's going to happen in 20 years. No one seems to remember that the first successful prescription antidepressant medication introduced for sale in the United States in 1940 was methamphetamine, sold on the street in impure form, an unknown dose as crystal meth. It's certainly a lot easier to say, my kid's on that damn crystal meth because there's a dealer on the next block, than it is to say my kid's buying antidepressants on the street. Promiscuity, IV drug use, oral drug use, smoking, alcoholism. It's hard to get enough of something that almost works. Addiction is not the core problem. Addiction is the marker for the core problem. It's someone's unconsciously attempted solution at dealing with problems that the rest of us know nothing about. What we're really looking at is the search for love. The whole sequence is lost in time and then is further protected by shame and by secrecy and by social taboos against exploring certain realms of human experience. Overwhelmingly, this is unrecognized. And while it's attracted intense intellectual interest.
Now why? Why are people doing that? What's the danger?
That's an important question. Overwhelmingly, most of the damage is done by people who are trusted individuals close within one's family. And this, of course, greatly accentuates the damage. We have all been taught as children that nice people do not ask about certain things or talk about certain things. It buys short-term comfort for the person who's promoting secrecy and often long-term damage, long-term anguish for the person who's the recipient of imposed secrecy. What it made clear to me was the enormous and powerful effect that parenting has on a whole range of features of how a child develops and functions as an adult, including survives.